this CD had a massive hype around it. I remember that I was ecstatic and I really felt this is going to be album of the year. However, it wasn't. This, of course, is going to be a talk about Soma Saito's Nuance, his big EP released in 2025, which was slightly off the mark for me, but it brought so many awesome things in the background. So let's kick off this episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Welcome to SEIYUU Lounge, I'm your host Vanessa, and in this episode we are going to talk about Soma Saito's Nuance. Of course, we have talked plenty about it in previous episodes. Let's say monthly review was one of those, and I also created a ton of features around Nuance at the time of release because I was super excited about it, and Soma Saito is my all-time favorite singer among male SEIYUU, so it was bound to happen. But in this episode we are going to cover a little bit more about that EP with parts of my review that was on monthly review that I cut because I was talking way too much for a long time in that episode, so I had to cut it short, otherwise the episode would be all about Nuance. So I'm going to bring you the uncut version of that review that I made on video so that you can understand my thoughts as I listen to that album or that EP at the time of release or really close to the time of release. It's been a long time since the album is out. It doesn't look like it, but it has been a couple of months and I'm already craving something more from Soma Saito. We know that if he follows the schedule, we are going to get another EP by the end of this year, so I'm rooting for that. Let's hope he brings something more storytelling driven and more complex than what he has brought, but not with this complexity that is overly vague at times. But let's go to me in the past to see what I was thinking at that time about Nuance, and that's the uncut version. You are going to start watching an episode instead of listening to it because it is a viewable part of the episode, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Then we have Soma Saito's Nuance. This CD right here is, or at least was, one of my most anticipated CDs of this year, and somehow it slightly frustrated my expectations. I was really excited because it is Soma Saito. I was expecting a really deep, character-driven concept in here. What we got was not a really strong story-driven concept. Just like in Fictions, but Fictions is not a conceptual album because full-length albums are almost like experiments for Soma Saito, whereas EPs are conceptual by nature. What we have here as a problem, and Soma Saito has actually mentioned this, is that he doesn't want people to compare the EPs because each EP is its own thing, it's its own it has its own identity and its unique vibe and concept, but it is impossible not to compare those when you are talking about especially quality and what you want to achieve with a CD or what was the main focus. And up until now, the EPs that Soma Saito has released, minus My Blue Vacation, were all heavily conceptual, character-driven EPs. My Blue Vacation wasn't, and Nuance isn't. So those two, at both ends of the spectrum, they are not character-driven EPs, which is a pity because I feel that where Soma Saito actually shines the most is whenever he is overly character-driven, almost like he is writing a story for you to uncover. And I like that side of him, which is really lends a lot from his literary side that he likes to write and he likes a lot to read. And fiction itself, not the CD, fiction itself is something that I like to see developing, and especially within music. It's really hard to accomplish a conceptual CD that really has a story from start to finish, follows a character from start to finish or a set of characters, and then has a big finale, which usually was the side or the B-side track or the hidden track in this case. Right now we don't have that in Nuance. This is a CD that has a really tough concept to tackle. I feel that Saito is getting increasingly vague or vaguer when it comes to the titles and the concepts that he is tackling. Because
hear me out. My beautiful, let's start from start to finish. My Blue Vacation doesn't have necessarily a concept. That's almost like going on a new journey, because it was a new journey for him as an artist. Then you go to My Beautiful Valentine. My Beautiful Valentine is a surrealistic romance or surrealistic love concept. Surrealism as a whole. That's really tough to actually accomplish. Yin Yang is dark as heck. It is almost like the depths of the darkness that someone has explored in an EP. And now we have Nuance, which is the little details that most people don't even understand or capture or feel or know how to explain, but in music format. So Saito is getting increasingly tougher to himself in terms of how can I actually accomplish this concept, because he's making the concepts vaguer as he goes. It feels like this CD is more of an assortment of songs that Saito had that actually captured a couple of feelings that are not really easy to describe. For example, there's a feeling that I have when I listen to music for the very first time. I've talked about this previously. I don't have the name for it because I don't know the name for it. But that thrill, that enjoyment of listening to a song or a CD for the very first time, that feeling, I can only feel it once when I listen to a CD for the very first time. For the second time that I listen to a CD, that magic is no longer there. That's a feeling I cannot even capture in any way. I cannot even describe it well. I did a really poor job describing it to you right now. So that's a feeling that I have that I don't know how to convey. And Nuance is all about these types of feelings that are really hard to convey. It makes the concept really complex and overly difficult, but then the execution is the complete opposite. It's really fairly easy, fairly simple to listen to. It's a really straightforward rock CD, with Mayohiga being the heaviest song. But other than that, there are no moments that will basically be like the turning point within a CD in which the story shifts to something else, because each song, like fictions, each song basically is a different feeling, approached in a different way or conveyed in a different way. Once again, each song is a nuance, hence the title, and focusing on slightly difficult to describe feelings or emotions. This is really high-level vagueness from Saito. And I feel that this is a CD that if you are searching for a really strong concept, I feel that this is not the thing. Still, My Beautiful Valentine keeps on being the best EP Soma Saito has released. Yin Yang is a close second. This is the third best, mind you, this is the third best. The worst, of course, is My Blue Vacation, because what the hell is that start of that CD? But other than that, yeah, it's really hard to compare those. Saito said to not compare, but if you are going to talk about the quality of the vocals, there's no comparison. This CD is not technical at all. While Fictions, for example, was overly technical, with the falsetto and the high notes and everything else going on in there, and the ballads being the first ever appearance in a Soma Saito CD, this one kept things simple and almost going back to Soma Saito's roots, which is indie rock, garage band rock from the 90s. And that sort of music, if you go check it out, didn't have really technical stuff on the vocal end. Falsetto was not really a thing that was really well explored by those bands. They really just played straightforward music that almost was recorded in one take and it's ready to go. So Saito wanted to encapsulate that vibe of one take in and it's ready to go in most of the songs that he has in Nuance, and that's exactly what he captured really well. And if you are a fan of 90s rock music, if you like Oasis and you like all those bands from the UK back in the early 90s, you will notice that there are some parallels here. He actually wanted to capture that vibe. That vibe is there. You can say that in some capacity there are some instances of influences of Nirvana in the music. There are. Not full on, but there are. So it feels like most simply an homage to his roots as a music fan, which will be nuances in the way that he built his musical knowledge and became a better artist, but also the nuances in the feelings and emotions that he's trying to portray with each song. It's really high level complex, I feel, but it's not a character driven CD in which you are going to have a twist, you are going to be surprised, and the hidden track is going to mesmerize you or basically make you want to check again the CD, because the story is completely different because of the hidden track. This time around, the hidden track, I could have not listened to it and I wouldn't miss anything in the CD. It doesn't add anything to the CD, I feel. It's fun, it's a rock song through and through, but it doesn't add anything to the story because there's no story. And when you look at all the songs, it really doesn't add too much. So it was a bit of a disappointment, the hidden track. Usually he ends up surprising with unique stuff there. This one was fairly straightforward and I would say slightly normal, which coming from Soma Saito is not common. When you say something is normal, you say this as there's no problem whatsoever. They already do this usually, but with Soma Saito, normal is not what he usually does. So it felt a bit too, it's good, but not impressive. It's good, but not remarkable. That's the thing that I have here. This is oddly intentional by Soma Saito to make a CD that is hard to describe, just like a Nuance is. That's the best way to actually describe Nuance. The performances are amazing, not overly technical, so I feel that this is a CD that will be welcoming to everyone, just wanting to vibe to the songs. Plenty of rock music here, so if you are a rock fan, this is going to be a treat. For me it was. There's only one song that veers toward pop territory, but that's not overly so. It's more jazzy than pop, that I felt that was a bit underwhelming. If you just listen to the CD on a streaming platform, you don't have the hidden track. You are not missing much, I will tell you. If you have the hidden track because you purchased the physical CD, you will understand what I'm talking about. The CD is really good, but the hidden track doesn't add anything, and it felt a bit underwhelming as a result. But yeah, I feel all in all, Nuance was a strong CD, not the best of November by far, and not the best by Soma Saito by far. Still, it doesn't take the title of one of the best CDs released in 2025, which says a lot about these overly difficult to explain CD.
I feel that DP had tons of good ideas, and once again I like the GarageBand sound. It's not common to find that sound among male SEIYUU artists. Once again, Soma Saito keeps on doing things that SEIYUU artists are not doing. He keeps on aligning himself more and more with what Brit rock is doing, what artists in the 90s and early 2000s were doing in the UK. And that's the sound that he brought here. It was almost like a one-take style of performance in which he was not caring too much of having things sounding overly polished or overly perfected, let's say. I like this about what he brought here. I feel that Soma Saito had, once again, tons of good ideas and he perfected those and he executed those really well. The problem was that people go to Soma Saito CDs with certain expectations. He set those expectations with In Bloom, My Beautiful Valentine, and Yin Yang. Those expectations are really high, and everyone, even if he doesn't want to, everyone is going to compare every single CD releases since then to those CDs. It's bound to happen, and it's bound to have that shock between what the hell happened, because that quality is not here. That storytelling driven narrative is not here. We don't have a twist by the end of it all, and the hidden track is not even worth the time you spend there. That's what I felt this time around. The hidden track was not really worth the time. It didn't add anything to the story. It was just another song that felt like it belonged there, but it didn't add anything, in my opinion, to the EP. But that's of course my opinion. Once again, there were a ton of people that loved that EP a lot more than I did. And mind you, I love the EP, but still, it's not My Beautiful Valentine, which for me it's the Ease magnum opus, sorry, but that's a perfect EP. And quite honestly, the best album ever released by a male SEIYUU, period. I'm not even going to argue that. And it doesn't even come close to the confusion that I was in when I listened to Yin Yang, because I didn't even know if I was feeling that the album was perfect or the album was bad, because I didn't understand what was going on in there. But as soon as everything clicked, and it took some listens for that album to click, I felt it was majestic. Once again, In Bloom was really tongue-in-cheek when it comes to exploring what it was exploring, and it really did well its job by being simple in the way that he was approaching the topics and covering those specific feelings, and even developing that overarching narrative in some capacity within the CD. We didn't get that with Fictions, we didn't get that with Nuance this time around, although Nuance was a tough as nails concept to execute. Honestly, I've said this before, I could never, in my mind, find a way to execute a concept around nuances. Little details that barely anyone notices. By default, if barely anyone notices, this is going to be a super confusing CD for people that usually don't notice the nuances. Or maybe it will fall flat for people that notice nuances but are not really vibing with those or clicking with those or understanding why we are exploring a song in such a way. I feel that this is a really divisive CD. Some people love it, other people were wishing for something more. I love it and was both wishing it was something more, or at least that it was something else. Still, Soma Saito is an instant buy artist for me. I don't even need to check the track list. I don't even check previews or anything, and I simply pre-order because I know that I will have a good time. He really is mindful of the way that he explores rock music, and even if he brings things from other music genres, in Nuance it's mostly rock, barely any other music genres. In Fictions, for example, he was exploring dance music and as well as city pop and different music genres, but when he goes to EPs, he tries to condense and specifically focus on really specific music genres to capture the vibes that he wants. So I know that when I go to an EP and it starts feeling like something, it will most likely feel like that something from start to finish. The problem for me this time around was that there was no overarching narrative, which is something that I was expecting from him, seeing as he's super strong in that department. No other SEIYUU artist does it like him. Barely any artists out there do narratives as strong as Soma Saito does, and how engaging and interesting and really rich the worlds that he builds and crafts for us are. So I was expecting that richness, that fullness, that idea of diving into a world and exploring it as I was listening to a CD. I didn't get that. That was one of my biggest complaints with the EP, but once again, those are creative choices. And I need to understand that from a perspective of the artist needs to evolve over time. Things will change that will influence the way they compose music or how they approach their music. And that much darkness that he was bringing with Yin Yang, which was pitch black darkness. Yin Yang is quite probably the darkest album I've ever heard. There are a couple of that could fit that list as well, not from SEIYUU artists, but from artists, let's say in general. But that's a pitch black album, by far. You will not find something darker than that among my SEIYUU artists, that's for sure. That's a given there. So I don't want an artist to actually be dark all the time, because for an artist to write darkness so well, they need to feel it. They need to have felt it before. Because one thing is to think, how does that feel? Another thing is, I actually felt it, so I'm going to write from a place of knowing it. And what you get from Yin Yang is a place of knowing it. And in some songs as well from My Beautiful Valentine, you have the same sense. Also from the way he's performing the music. Super emotional in those two CDs in specific. When you go to Nuance, you don't have those emotions. It's more surface level in terms of the performance itself. Maybe because the lyrics are not as deep. Maybe because he doesn't want to bring that darkness or that layer of complexity to his music. Mind you, his music is still complex, but he maybe didn't want to bring that complexity to his music again. Or maybe this was not the right CD to bring that complexity again. Once again, I hope that, and I feel that Soma Saito maybe will return to his storytelling-driven EPs in the future. I would love to see that happening this year. I would love, really, to have that surprise. But once again, he is the artist, and I'm the fan. What I need to do on my end is to actually listen, support. If the music doesn't click with me, then I move on. If the music clicks with me, I will rave about it to no end, as you already know. But I like to see these changes in the artists, and I can understand those changes, because if you do the same thing over and over again, it gets boring as hell. Even if you are catering to a side of your fandom that likes that and will always eat that, you still want, as an artist, to bring variety, to explore different things. You have tons of ideas that you want to bring to the table. You are not going to do the same thing over and over again, otherwise being an artist will become super boring and just another role that he has in his life. And I feel that he uses music as a creative outlet to do things that he usually cannot do as a voice actor, and this is where he lets his imagination run. And I like to see where his imagination is basically running to, and I look forward to see what he does next. So, while I was kind of critical about the CD, Nuance is not perfect, of course. I understand fully the reasons why he may have changed a little bit the sound to be softer, to be warmer. Even if there is some darkness here and there in this music, it's not a full-on darkness, because you don't want the artist to be immersed in so much darkness for such a long time. That's not positive for the artist, that's not positive for the fans, and it can damage people over time. So I can understand that idea. So yeah, this was all from me. It's already kind of a long episode. This is really all from me about Nuance from Soma Saito. I'm not going to cover it again unless there is a top something or we need to talk about specific things that happen in music, but I feel that I've already exhausted everything that I had to talk about Nuance. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I would love to know what you think about Nuance now that it has been 4 months since the album is out. What do you think now that you have listened to it time and time again? Do you feel this is a good album? Do you feel it's an album that came up a little bit short and you were expecting a bit more? Do you feel this is a good, let's say, preparation for what's to come in the next EP? Are you expecting a different type of EP for the next one, or do you think that Soma Saito will go in the same vein? I would love to know what you think in the comments, so feel free to leave the comments below. And once again, thank you so much for watching this episode or listening to this episode, and I'll see you guys in the next one.